Nah. Oh, give me a second. Just gonna share this really quick and then we'll start. Then we'll get going. This is gonna be stupid. Oh. Alright. Should be good here. Sorry. Locking in. So, should be getting injury updates. Alright, should be coming through. There's one that, in my opinion, kind of changes the running back. So, Tony Pollard's active, so that's kind of upsetting. Quinnen Williams is inactive. That's a huge blow for Jets' defensive line. Zach Ertz active, Pollard, Tracy. So I didn't know Quinnen Williams is out. I just want to see something. I want to see who the Jets' backup would be. Because, like, Kyron now just seems like he's in a really good spot. What? Yeah. All right, so looking at that. All right, so I'm going to go to running back first just because I think there's a lot of crazy good running back plays on this slate. So, Saquon's playable at 8,300. I don't think it's a must. Bijan seems like he's in a really good spot. Obviously, you have a rookie quarterback starting in his first game at home. So, Bijan, Tyler Algier probably going to get a good amount of volume, not just in the ground, but the receiving game as well. Chase Brown, the volume is there. I don't think, Chase Brown is kind of in a weird spot. Like, if you want to pay down off Bijan, he's there. But you're paying more than kind of Gibbs, Connor, Hubbard. So, Chase Brown's kind of out for me. If you have the money to get Bijan and, you're really confident in it, go for it. But, Gibbs is in a really good spot. Kyron's now in an amazing spot. James Conner, Chuba Hubbard, James Cook, those guys are in really good spots. Not too interested in Jonathan Taylor. Pollard, I was more interested in Spears if Pollard was out because Spears is 4,900. But we thankfully didn't get that because that would have just, I think, thrown a lot of people's lineups out. But that would have been crazy. And then going down cheaper, I will say Breece Hall is kind of intriguing at 6,100 just because the talent that we know Breece Hall is. And I mean, the upside of what Breece Hall could be. 6,100 seems very cheap. And I mean, you look at the drop off in price, it's crazy how down he's been. But I will say, if you're needing a cheap running back, Alexander Mattson, 5,100, I think is definitely worth taking a look at. McCormick out. I think it's just him and Abdullah. Zamir White is out, so Alexander Mattson at 5,100, I think is a guy you could pay down to. Obviously, Patrick Taylor's there as well, but like if I'm comparing the two, I'd rather have Mattson than Taylor. I just don't know what to expect out of San Fran running backs now, right? Like we've lost the top 4 running backs for San Fran, which are all talented. I think if any of those guys get the start, they're in a good spot. But now you're getting down to Patrick Taylor, Keyshawn Vaughn, Izzy. Like Izzy's kind of intriguing. I just liked him in New York. But I mean, other than that, there's not a lot down here. Like I mentioned, Tyler Algier just because of that. Jerome Ford is worth mentioning against Cincy. Sam Hubbard is out, I believe, for Cincy. So if you're looking for another piece with DTR as quarterback, I think Jerome Ford's price is pretty cheap. So it's kind of where I'm at with running back. I think there's a lot of great, I think this is what dictates what lineups are going to win and lose, because there's so many good wide receivers at a cheap price here that the running backs of who you're paying for, right? Obviously Gibbs is going to be the most owned quarterback. He should be, at least. But then deciding, do you want to pay up for Bijan? Do you want to pay for Kyron? Do you want to pay for James Conner? Do you want to pay for Chuba? Those are the options that are going to dictate which lines cash and don't cash, because that is a top salary you're paying for those guys. So paying $6,800 and above for 2 of these guys, because essentially that's what it is. Because if you're not getting 2 of those guys, you're paying down for Breece Hall, maybe Jerome Ford, Alexander Mattson, you're taking a big risk when there's a lot of good running backs in really good spots. Moving on to quarterback, I think quarterback is pretty simple. It's pay down at quarterback this week. You get a few good matchups. I will mention Aaron Rodgers, but I don't think he's really my pool. Caleb Williams at 5,500 against Detroit. It's just Chicago's got to get stuff going, right? They got to build some momentum going into next season. This season's already over. So you're pretty much just playing buzzkill, right, at this point. Caleb Williams trying to improve with DJ Moore, Roma Dunze, maybe Keenan Allen, but trying to get something going into next year. So it's not like they're going to die down. Detroit's defense is just really banged up. So Caleb Williams at 5,500. Anthony Richardson at 5,400, $100 cheaper. This one is going to be interesting on ownership for quarterback, because I could see any 3 of these guys, and we'll talk about the third one in just a second, but I could see Anthony Richardson in lineups. I could see Caleb Williams in lineups, and then obviously we go down. I passed him. Michael Penix, 4,500. Like, those are probably the top 3 owned quarterbacks on this slate. Do you want to take the risk at Michael Penix in a good matchup in his first game at home against the Giants at 4,500, right? He doesn't need a lot to pay off. You need what? 2 touchdowns and maybe 200 yards, or 200 yards and a touchdown, somewhere around there, right? So you don't need a lot for the price you're paying, especially if you're paying up for running backs this week. The more upside is Richardson and Williams. I'd lean towards, if you want the higher upside but bigger risk, Anthony Richardson. Like, we know the passing game woes. Like, we know it doesn't need to be discussed anymore. But the rushing is where he gets his fantasy points. Like, this is where he gets his bang for buck points. You see in games that he's getting a touchdown, he's paying off, right? Like 29, 23, 16. Like, he's paying off, getting some rushing. Obviously, the passing helps. But facing a Tennessee defense, it's tough. Like, if you want the safer ceiling guy at the price point, it's Caleb. But there is, there is the shot that Detroit's defense still plays good. Like, somehow they still play good against the Bears. And it's not a knock on the Detroit defense at all. They have so many injuries on that defense. It's crazy what they've done so far this season with the amount of guys that have been hurt. If all those guys came back, I think Detroit's got this Super Bowl pretty much locked, in my opinion. Moving on to wide receiver, Jamar Chase in a great spot. Him and T. Higgins are in great spots. 6,800 and 8,500. I just don't think you need to pay those prices though this week. I don't. They're in great spots. If you have them in your fantasy lineups, you're obviously starting them, so it's not knocking them at all. Same thing for Justin Jefferson, in an amazing spot. Kind of same thing for Puka in a way. It's not an amazing spot, but I mean, this guy is pretty much, him and Cooper Kupp are matchup proof. Cooper Kupp just dropped a goose egg. Amon-Ra's in a really good spot against the Bears, playing against slot Kyler Gordon. But obviously, it's really hard to play Gibbs and Amon-Ra and not want to play. Like, you have to play Jared Goff if you're playing Gibbs and Amon-Ra. There's no discussion about it. And that's a lot of salary you're paying. Continue to go down. I think Devontae Adams, Garrett Wilson are really good spots against the Rams. Who do you want to take a shot on? Last week I said Devontae Adams was the guy I'm taking a shot on for the Jets. And definitely paid off. Helped a lot of tournament lines. This week it's Garrett Wilson for me. I think this is a Garrett Wilson week where we see him get 20 plus points. Now, will it hit the 30 plus? Probably not, but a higher 20-point game I could see out of Garrett Wilson this week. One name I'm throwing out there that I kind of secretly like is Tyreek Hill at 6,900. Obviously, he's playing, right? Full practice. I think he's in a good spot. He's going to be lower owned. Jalen Waddle, I mean, it's a later game, if I'm not mistaken, right? Yeah, later game. So we're not going to get the status on Waddle just yet, but he is doubtful. Doubtful typically means they're out. So Miami at home. San Fran's been pretty poor on the road. So I kind of like Tyreek at 6,900. And then going down to prices, Cooper Kupp is just, like, I get he dropped 0. I get that he dropped 0 last week. But Cooper Kupp is a pretty good wide receiver for fantasy, like, always. And you're getting him at the cheapest he's been all year at 6,500. So, do that information as you will. It's the cheapest he's been. I get it's the Jets. They're a tough team. But, I mean, Cooper Kupp at that price is ridiculous. But going down here, this is like decision 2 on lineups. Like, decision 1 is who you're paying up for at running back. Decision 2 is this mid-tier pack. And when I say mid-tier, I mean just price point, not players or anything like that, matchups. It's just the prices, right? So you get Drake London 6,400, Brian Thomas 6,300, Malik Neighbors 6,100, JSN at 6K, Khalil Shakir at 5,900, Jacoby Myers at 5,800, DJ Moore at 5,700, DK Metcalf at 5,500, Keenan Allen at 5,300, Josh Downs at 4,900. So for $1,500 difference between Downs and Drake London, like, that's kind of the tier. This is where your wide receivers are, right? Like, yes, you could go up here. I don't have a problem with anybody paying up for some of these guys up here. But you're more than likely, if you're playing only 3 wide receivers on the slate and you're paying up for running backs, you're getting this tier. And that's the difficult part of figuring out who you want in your lineup. Obviously, the Bears wide receivers are in pretty good spots. It's a colder game in Chicago at that. But I mentioned Detroit's secondary is really hurt and banged up. Jacoby Myers is going to be AOC. So Jacoby Myers, Brock Bowers go up versus, having Desmond Ridder. So both those guys are in really good spots. Khalil Shakir, I love the running game for Buffalo. New England has some injuries defensively. In the slot, Khalil Shakir seems like he's in a really, really solid spot at 5,900. Jason, kind of the same thing against Minnesota. Malik Neighbors is kind of a riskier one, but I do think he's in a really good spot, especially with Drew Lock as the quarterback. So they're in really good spots. I don't think taking the risk on Drake London is worth it with Penix yet. It's a really good matchup for him. His numbers are really good versus man coverage, but it's the quarterback difference of if you want to take a risk, especially in cash. Tournaments, by all means, like go right ahead. I will mention also, like he's been underperforming clearly this season. Deebo Samuel is 5,200, so yet again, the cheapest we've gotten him. He got 10 opportunities last week against the Rams. Granted, has not paid off, right? Like, since week 6, he has not paid off at all. And even in then, that was like a once in this season type of game, right? Minnesota and Seattle, the only two matchups. We're getting him very cheap. The running backs are hurt for San Fran. I would not be surprised to see someone like Deebo Samuel get 5+ carries this game and 6 to 7 targets. So you're talking getting 10+ opportunities at 5,200 against Miami. Granted, Miami's kind of a better defense this year, but first price point, it's not bad. Josh Downs just in a really good spot against Tennessee. His numbers versus Tennessee's defense, the zone man, they're kind of neutral, right? It's very close. But Josh Downs kind of leads the team in both, especially getting someone like Anthony Richardson versus Joe Flacco, to where Joe Flacco was very consistent with shorter. You get some more, hopefully, bombs with Anthony Richardson. Then going down here, Wandell is worth playing. Jalen Coker continues to be worth playing. Trey Tucker with AOC at 3,900 is definitely worth playing. Malik Washington is worth mentioning now with the injuries for Miami's pass catchers. Definitely watching out for that one. And then other than that, there's not a whole lot down here I'm kind of looking at. So kind of it for wide receivers. Moving on to tight ends. Brock Bowers is in an amazing spot against Jacksonville at home with AOC. Trey McBride, obviously, I think a lot of people are playing for the upside of him getting this touchdown this game. I know a lot of people like myself did bet his touchdown last week. A lot of people are betting it yet again this week. He's, I think, setting a record for most receptions without a touchdown. So it's 6,200. If you want to take that shot, go for it. But I'm kind of looking down. Hunter Henry at 4,100 on the road against Buffalo. Buffalo's just been pretty poor against tight ends. But Strange at 3,500 yet again is playable against Vegas, a team that's been, mid-pack against tight ends. But the defense as a whole, Max Crosby is now on IR, so that defense is very, very banged up top to bottom. I will mention Chig Okonkwo, 3,400 against the Colts. Colts been underperforming against tight ends. But with Mr. Rudolph as his quarterback, we saw Chig get 8 receptions for 59 yards against Cincy, a team that's been pretty bad against tight ends. Granted, his salary went up 500 because that's just what DraftKings does to us. Chig he's not had a good season, just has not gotten the ball right. Can't expect a tight end to really have ceiling games or anything like that with only getting 3 to 4 targets a game on average. So, he sees a little more targets, like 10 targets, which isn't expected. Somewhere around 6 or 7, I think is more of a realistic goal for someone like Chig. But for him to get 10 targets with Rudolph and Wiley, I think was heavily involved as well. Both those guys heavily involved, so kind of like Chig at his price point. And I will mention, yet again, it's not the greatest matchup, but Daniel Bellinger with Drew Lock. Like, 10 targets, granted, one wasn't Drew Lock. 10 targets, 80 yards, no touchdowns, but for his price points, he's paying off, right? He's paying off for his price points. That's kind of what you want out of your defense. So if you want to pay up for a defense you're very confident in this week and, pay down at tight end, like punt to get, hopefully 6 to 7 points at his price point, Daniel Bellinger is worth mentioning again. So that that's where I'm at with tight ends. Defenses, obviously the Bengals against Cleveland is one. Buffalo against New England. Atlanta against the Giants. Those kind of stand out there. Going down for paydowns. If you want to target the narrative of Jared Goff outside of a dome, like actual cold weather, you could go the narrative against Detroit Week 3 at 2,300. Granted, it was a Thanksgiving slate, so the price may have varied. Bears got 4 points against them. I do believe Jalen Johnson is playing. I didn't see him on the inactive, so I believe Jalen Johnson is playing. He just had a sickness. But the Bears defense at 2,200. Jets just had Quentin Williams out, so that's kind of a hit there. Titans against Indy. This one just playing against. I don't know why I got a lisp there. Playing against Anthony Richardson is worth a shot. Earlier in the season, 3 points for him. I think it's worth a shot against the Colts offense. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. So I hope you guys did enjoy the live stream here. Hopefully we have a good DFS day today. Going forward, I don't know what my schedule is going to look like entirely. I know I obviously have things planned around Christmas Eve and Christmas, so I don't know if I'll have content out for you guys, so I do apologize in advance. But coming up, we do have a full slate today. We have the Sunday night game, we have the Monday night game, and then we have Wednesday games, we have a Thursday game, we have Saturday games, we have Sunday games, we have Monday games. So a lot of football, a lot of DFS coming up within the next 8 days. So it's going to be a good time for DFS. If you're really into DFS and love playing this, you're going to have a lot of contests coming up. So I will try to put out what I can for you guys for content wise, but yet again, I do value family time around the holidays. So if I don't have content, I do apologize in advance, but I hope you guys understand. So I will see you guys in the next one.